All right, for just 1 second and 1 second only. And then at the end again, let's go ahead and if you are amenable to it, pop on your video and say hello to Debbie so that she can see who's with us tonight. What's up, peeps? At the very end, we'll definitely take a picture because you know how I do. If you know me, we always take a picture. Faux show, faux show. All right, we're gonna go ahead and you can pop your videos off for now. Make sure you stay muted until you ask a question. We're gonna be doing some of these meet and greets this semester. And the way it'll work is that some of them will be conducted in sign language. This one is gonna be conducted in English, as you can see. And that gives our interns practice on kind of a platform setting that's low stakes to be able to practice their skills, because most of the people who are here know sign language or English and are able to keep up with the message either way. So no one's gonna die unless there's actually an emergency somewhere, then please log off of Zoom and take care of that. But yeah, no one's gonna die because you messed up tonight. So no pressure, interns, you're gonna be awesome. Now, on that note, I would love to introduce to you my very, very dear friend, Debbie. Wave to everybody, Debbie. There she is, there she is. I have known Debbie for far longer than I would like to admit that I've known Debbie, probably for over 20 some odd years now. So since I was a student, every time I say that, I feel like a grandma, like when I was a student, we interpreted uphill both ways. Anyway. But yeah, I'm so thrilled for her to come and join us tonight. We sent out her bio. There's so much on it, like, I don't know, like it makes me feel like I haven't accomplished much looking at Debbie's bio. Kind of feel like a slacker. I need to get with it anyway. But she has done so many different things. She has a wealth of knowledge in so many different areas of interpreting and life. And that's why I wanted to bring her in tonight. So here's how this is going to work. Whenever you have a question, you can do one of two things. If you're kind of shy and you don't want to turn on your video, you can type out your questions in the chat, and that's fine. We'll get to them in order. But certainly if you're feeling brave and you want to, you can pop on your video. I will ask that you, unless you're deaf, if you're hearing and amenable to it, I would rather just to keep the interpreting kind of, you know, one direction. If you would go ahead and just ask your question in English, but unless you would prefer sign language, or especially obviously if you're deaf, you do you. Deaf or hard of hearing, you do you. Any questions? Feel free to type them in the chat. Like I said, if you have any questions as Debbie's talking about herself, to ask. So I will start it off though. First of all, Debbie, I did not know what a wealth of experience you had with mental health interpreting. Like I knew you did some of that, but would you mind telling everybody a little bit about what MHIT is?
Okay. Mental health interpreter training. It's in Montgomery, Alabama. It's an annual training that takes in new interpreters and also has an alumni track. And I attend the alumni track, of course. It all started with the people that established MHIT in Montgomery. From the original group of people were in Missouri, where I was when I took this training. The Health and Human Services had $8 million. They donated $4 million to North Carolina and $4 million to the state of Missouri to develop an interpreter qualification program for mental health interpreting. They saw that just regular interpreting, even medical interpreting, was not sufficient for mental health. Mental health has a whole different group of not just signs, but ways we perform, things we need to be aware of. It's as different from medical as it is legal. And because of that, because of various lawsuits throughout the United States, the HHS decided to try to develop a program. And Missouri had their $4 million and developed it. The people that were there ended up leaving when the money ran out and went to Alabama. Alabama had just lost, the state had just lost a lawsuit against a family that had lost a deaf family member that did not have proper interpreting for their care of their family member. It was a son. And mom and dad had a lot of money. And they said, you develop a program here, the qualifications here, and you cannot charge your interpreters for a certain period of time that attend. And it has to be a qualified program. So some of the people from North Carolina and people from Missouri left and went and developed that in Montgomery. And it has been ongoing now for 20 years. I finished my certification in 2002, and it required 40 hours of actual hands-on training and then interning with a mentor, and then had to write a research paper and turn it into the Department of Mental Health for approval. And I had to be observed a while after that as well. And I became certified.
That's so awesome. Can you, I know obviously, can you teach us about mental health? Like, yeah, we don't have enough time for that tonight. You go to MHIT and then you went to the alumni track, and that's still probably not enough. But can you tell us, like, because like you said, I would agree, I don't do mental health for that very reason, because I know I'm not qualified to do it. But can you give us some examples of some things you might have to consider in a mental health situation that would be different from, say, a medical situation? Because I think you're right. I think a lot of people think, oh, I know medical, so I can do mental health. But like, what are some differences that you might encounter in that situation?
Personal safety. Personal safety is something they ingrain in us to, if you're working in a mental health, wherever you are, be close to the door, be close to the staff at all times. You don't know what's going to happen, even if it's the hearing people that are the ones that are going to act up. When we pronominalize an ASL, we use our index finger. We indicate this person speaking, this is moving, this is whatever. However we pronominalize, that's very common. You can't do that with people that are schizophrenic. It makes them trigger, and often their paranoia will go off the charts just because you pointed to them or you pointed to something, even though there may not be anything there. So that was my paper. I ended up writing about that. There's medications and how they affect you are totally different than what you've taken an antibiotic or a cardiac medication or blood pressure, diabetic, whatever. Those medications are totally different. The psychopharmacology medications don't always work. They are not a guarantee 100%, and often they don't, especially at the low dose that they start. So there's some nuances in some of the language of people looking over my shoulder. I have to let the practitioner know that they're looking over my shoulder at something else, not me, or not the practitioner. I can't teach it today. It's just
No, but those are some good examples of things that I think most people wouldn't think of. Like you said, pronouns, like we don't think of that. Like, yeah, absolutely. And Debbie and I believe both know an interpreter who has since passed, who actually did have her finger bitten off. So yeah,
Yep.
So it happens. Yeah, that was a mistake that was not made again, I don't believe. So yeah, you learn your lesson pretty fast that way. Sure. Anyway. Very good, very good. Well, I know obviously again you have just such a wealth of interpreting in different situations. I know currently you're doing some VRS work. What other, well, and let me remind people, if you have questions, I know some people just joined us. So if you have questions, you can either type them in the chat or you're welcome to raise your hand and I will ask you to ask your question to Debbie. So either way, just feel free to join in that way. But before that, what kinds of work are you currently most involved with, would you say?
Medical. Before I became an interpreter, on my bio, it says I worked in a hospital, several hospitals, and for a short period of time, even for an oncologist. I had the trauma center experience that I had there is actually what prompted me to become an interpreter, because I was observing deaf patients coming in with no communication, none, no family. They were on the street or there was some other issues going on that they had nobody to, family members to interpret for them. And when you're having a heart attack or having an asthma attack, you don't want to write and you don't want to have to finger spell everything when you're trying to breathe and you're trying to not die. So those kinds of um, experiences that I've had have brought me to becoming an interpreter, and now I work in medicine a lot because I understand the vernacular, the processes, much like Kenny and much like a lot of other interpreters that are seasoned working with other medical personnel that are deaf. We have had a lot of other experiences as well, but I love medicine. I absolutely love medicine. It's high risk, but it's you can see results much faster than you can even with education. So yeah.
That is very true. David asked a question in the chat. He said, do they have protocols for staff or interpreters that need to follow for safety, like at a jail, for example, or, you know?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. But most places that you attend that have an elopement risk or they're going to lock you in, and you are just as vulnerable as the staff that are there. So you stay close to staff. If staff say leave, you leave. If the staff say go in this room, you go in this room. If you, like in prison, like in the jails, there is no hostages. Anybody, you are a hostage, too bad. You're stuck. No different than any guard, correction officer, or attorney, or anyone else that may be in there. Doesn't matter.
That's a good point. Lockdown is lockdown. Let's see, Raina asked the question, the medical vocabulary used, how do you interpret to those with no or like minimal language or have basic language? How do you break it down to the patient or to a family member?
It depends on what I'm trying to break down. And I usually refer back to the practitioner to explain it. If my deaf consumer, my deaf patient, I'm always doing a check-in. When you start working as an interpreter and you get out really in the field, you need to be doing that check-in to make sure that there's some understanding. That's vital. Even when you're in K-12, that's vital. You have to be able to understand they're getting it. You have to know your consumer. And if they're not checking in, you see this sort of questionable face, I make that into a question. And what was that you just said? It's not my responsibility to explain it to them, but I will expand if it's a language issue, yes. But I don't explain what that means.
What about when you get the nod and smile?
That's still I don't understand. And sometimes I will ask the practitioner, if you give me a moment, I want to make sure there's some understanding here. See, what did I just say? You can't parrot me, you can't copy me, tell me what I just said. And I can get back exactly what they understand. And I do that a lot because I want to make sure they walk away understanding what a bland diet is, that is not bread and water. Or they're supposed to take their medication 3 times a day, meaning not all 3 in the morning. So tell me what that means.
Very, very true. I like it. Let's see. Some other things too. I don't know. One thing I'll tell everybody that I don't even know if it was on your bio. I can't remember now. But I know that Debbie knows is that when I first met her, the first time I met her and our first assignment together were one and the same. And we were interpreting a college accounting class. And I told the college at the time, I don't know anything about accounting. I told them that. I was like, and they're like, well, we really need someone. And they're like, we paired you with someone who knows a lot about accounting. You're fine. And so it was the one time that probably they tried to convince me into something that it was true. You know, sometimes people try to convince you to take a job and then you take it and you're like, yeah, this was a mistake. But this was not a mistake. Debbie really, really is amazing. And so during the break, because we didn't get to consult much beforehand, but during the break, I was like, I need to know everything you know about accounting. And she was great. And not only that, but like she just I didn't know that back in St. Louis she had a wealth of experience with accounting. So can you tell us about some of your experience with that prior to becoming interpreter?
Yeah, I had Department of Defense clearance, so I did a lot of accounting, interpreting for people that worked for the Department of Defense. And there's a huge center there, and they have several deaf people that work there. So there was always meetings going on, there's follow-ups, there's staffing, there's changes up of stuff that's going on. It's government, it always changes. So I was there quite a bit. I also had interpreted for some deaf that were working at DOD, but it was for Boeing. And there was some other places that had a lot of just fortunate to fall into that those jobs with that genre. It was great. I mean, I loved it. They taught me. I mean, I knew a lot, but they taught me what they wanted. And so it was easier for me to put that in a file for them, this in another file for somebody else. And I was able to recall that. And it helped me make my message much clearer for them. And as a result, I was requested a lot. So because I was able to communicate enough with them that I know what my boss is saying. Yeah, or I know what they're going to say because they always say the same thing. That, so, yeah. Yeah.
Very true. Very true. Savannah asked, do you have an interpreting experience you feel was the most rewarding in your career thus far? If you don't mind sharing, of course.
Oh my God. I have to, there's so many different categories that I can say that in. Interpreting for a baby being born, interpreting for, which is something that's so, and then when I've been working with a consumer, a student maybe, that has finally got it. They were struggling with a specific topic. That to me means I did what I was supposed to do to make sure they got the information to make that process happen so they understood it. It's their process, not mine. But when they have an aha, that's like, yes, I did it. I did it for them. They got it. They made it because I was able to give them the right information at the right time for them to understand. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
that's always rewarding. I think it's just nothing else. Like I understand that just from the standpoint of it's nice to get to pop into somebody's life for this really special moment, just, you know, for however many minutes of the day, like, you know, I don't know. And it's something you always have a bond with that person about too. So that's kind of cool. So
Always.
no, I totally agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And a similar question, but a little bit different. What A is asking, what is your favorite part about being an interpreter?
The reason why I haven't retired. and that is my favorite part of being an interpreter, that I actually can leave my fingerprint on somebody's life that has made a difference in their life, that they can go on without me. And they have, it sounds weird. I really like having the impact on somebody's life. The same as when I worked in medicine. When I worked in medicine, when I worked in a lab, I saw someone's life change because of the testing that I did and the results that were given to the doctor so they could be treated appropriately. The same in interpreting. It had to go through me, but I'm the conduit, the tool that impacted somebody's life for the good. Woe be it if it ever impacts them to the negative. And I have a mentor for that reason. If I think I messed up, I have a mentor. As old as I am, and y'all don't know how old I am, but as old as I am, I still have a mentor. So yeah.
And I have two questions here in the chat, but before I get to those, just while you're on that topic, like, what is the benefit to you or that you see from both being a mentor and also being a mentee? Like, how has that benefited you personally?
Well, I learned from my mentees. I have quite a few, and I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. I learned because of the questions that are posed to me to make me think, why do I do what I do? And I'm like, okay, I maybe need to revisit this. Is this really the reason why I'm doing this? Or is this really the way I think about it? Because I've learned some new information. I don't do it like that anymore. Why? So passing that information on as a mentor to a mentee, I absolutely love that. I respect them because they respect me enough to consider my perspective. That makes sense. And then I have a mentor because you will have days when you have what I call uck or ick or guck or like a black tar, something that has happened. I had someone that just recently, and I had to talk to somebody about it that doesn't understand interpreting, but because my other mentor wasn't available. So I talked to somebody that I still respect in a social work field, and I asked them, this is what happened. And I feel so, oh, but Debbie, that wasn't about you. It was about them. Oh yeah, thank you for helping me reframe that. I appreciate that. I had to get that reminder. So having somebody that I can talk to get that stuff off my chest, and I don't carry it to the next job or to carry it to the next deaf person, or we already have vicarious trauma as it is. To alleviate or to minimize some of that is to be able to have a mentor, somebody you can trust, and strongly suggest that you have somebody, you get a hold of somebody before you graduate. And you may change your mentors as you get older and more seasoned. But it doesn't hurt to also be a mentor yourself because you will learn from it.
That's
Yeah.
very true. I would agree. I definitely learn more. Yeah. Anytime from students, I'm like, oh, or I steal things. I mean, like sometimes they think about things in a way I wouldn't have thought of it. And I'm like, oh, and I tell them, I'm like, I'm going to steal that. That's really good. Yeah. I've been doing this.
I have
been doing this very inefficiently, and that's a much smarter way of doing this. Camille asked, do you have any tips for us going through the interpreter training program now when we feel discouraged or we feel like we never quite understand enough to actually finish the program? I think all of us get to that point. I think all of us who are in the field sometimes feel like that, but anyway.
Yeah, tips. Look where you've come from. Look where you've come from. Look where you are now from where you've been. You've come a long way. To get to this point, you've come a long way. Go back and revisit why you wanted to do this to begin with. And let that encourage you. Again, talk to a mentor. Talk to somebody that's seasoned and say, did you ever have this? How did you overcome that? Everybody has a different way of dealing with it. Me, I don't know how much you know about me, but I pray. And I just, God, show me something that I need to do differently. Why do I feel like this? This is frustrating. I'm hitting a wall. Why is this happening? And there's always some kind of an answer that comes shortly after that. So I can't tell you how you should deal with it because it's going to be different. But for me, that's what I did. And it worked. I had a deaf person show up in my life. Somebody I'd never met, would never meet again, because I was working in a hospital still. So I had a deaf person come in that was a family member. And they were able to understand me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they can understand me. And I can understand them. Okay, this is okay. I'm here. I wouldn't have been able to do this a year ago. I'm fine. I can go. And you will get there. And when you go for your testing, every single piece of testing that you go through, every step that you go through, it will be a challenge. But no, it's going to make you better. Don't think of the test as being, it's the all to end all. If I don't pass, I'll never make it. No. because I can promise you not every single one of us has passed every single test we ever took in interpreting in anything. We don't. So just stride forward. Don't give up. Don't give up. You're here now. Oh my goodness. I'm so proud of you for being here because I'm not going to be around very long. I really am not. I mean, I may be around for a few more years, few more years,
You
but
can't leave me.
but you know how old I am. Come on. Yeah, yeah. Got the gray
Um,
hair to prove it.
yeah, that's been earned. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
Camille said, thank you for your answer.
Yes.
Wendy asked, if you were to offer someone advice about interpreting in the mental health field, who may be interested in that particular area, what would it be? I'm guessing MHIT to start with, but I don't know.
Yeah. Get at least one level of certification. And the reason why I didn't mention this because I don't really want to frustrate y'all, but there's going to be this that is very critical, because there are going to be nuances in facial structure, facial expressions, the things that are said on the face that make a lot of sense to the practitioner. And if you leave it out, you don't see it, you're doubting yourself. If you don't have enough self-assurance to do it, don't, because you will miss and you will misguide. The very first major interpreting assignment that I had in mental health, I was sent in to replace someone else that had no certification. Had been working with a deaf patient in a lockup unit, and they had been there for 6 years, civilly committed. And the civil commission that was given to this person, they never really thought they would ever get out. And what happened was this person didn't have any boundaries. This woman would bring him clothes, candy, cookies, things to do, coloring books, that kind of stuff, and not know that that was wrong. And yet this person, this man, would go up to the wall and start talking to the wall. And the medication that the doctors were putting this patient on was not working. They didn't know why. So they brought me in and I sat with her for one full day. She never showed up again. And the reason why was because she wasn't seeing what he was saying. Because there was a lot of non-manual and body language that was very clear in ASL for a deaf person to show that there was some resistance. There was some things I'm not going to tell you because I don't trust you, but that was never relayed. And so when I stepped in for a year and a half, I saw this patient on a regular basis. Within 6 months after after I finished a year and a half. So 2 years later, they were on medication, they were stable and released to a group home. So this is very important. This is very important. And if you don't know how to put English to it, don't go into mental health. Really have some understanding of what this is. Trust yourself, trust your gut, and do the MHIT training. When you get your basic, go to MHIT. It will really give you a wealth of knowledge. It really will.
And I've seen some people say that, like, because I looked into going to MHIT, but it gets booked almost as soon as it gets announced. Like, so if you are interested in attending it, like, you need to apply early.
Now. Now.
Whenever they first announce that it's happening, like, you need to, it's kind of like, yeah, San Diego Comic-Con, like, still fills up real fast.
Same thing, yes.
Alexis asked, if you could interpret in a field different subject matter than what you've ever interpreted in, what would you choose and why? So, I mean, you've pretty much done just about everything, but if there's something out there like that you haven't done, what would you think you might try? I don't know.
That's what I don't know.
You should come to Comic-Con with me.
Well, I was going to say, one thing I haven't done yet, and I'm considering it because I do have a CICT, I've been thinking about doing cruises. I have not because I've always been too busy. And that's something I would like to do, is do a cruise. I've been on a cruise as a not as an interpreter, but just to go. That was awesome. And I'm thinking, why can't I do this as an interpreter? I'll think about it. And I've just thought about it and I put it on the back burner, but I think I'd like to do that. That's one thing I'd like to do. Yeah.
Good answer. Good answer. I think you'd be good at the shows anyway, just knowing your interpreting style. David asked, why mental health interpreting? What made you choose that over all the different things that you'd interpreted for? You mentioned you've seen babies being born and helped students until they finally, achieved what they were looking for, and that filled you with, fulfill, or that gave you joy and fulfillment. But why mental health? What made you choose that if it sounds as dangerous as it sounds? That's a good.
It is dangerous. Well, while I was in St. Louis, I worked for a deaf attorney for a few years. I actually went through part of law school with him, and then he passed his bar, and then he interviewed a bunch of the interpreters that are 3, 4, 5 interpreters level, and he picked 4, and I was one of them. So I interpreted for Jamie for a few years. Part of that led me to be available for civil commitments, and civil commitments do require mental health. So it led me to working in mental health on a civil commitment basis. And because my skill sets, I was a level 5 in Missouri. So while I was working in civil commitments, not in the courts as much as post. So working with public defender, working with their doctors, working with the people that were doing the psychoanalysis, I realized there was something that wasn't quite right. And right at that time, they started, my agency just started putting me in lockdown units because there was a need, and I was understanding what was necessary because the psychologist and the psychiatrist and the public defender showed me there are certain things you need to watch for. And I also had a mentor that helped me out with that. So I started doing that, and then then the Missouri Interpreter Certification System came up with this interpreter mental health processing program. And so I joined it, and out of the 30 people that were in my group, 8 were selected, and I was one of those to pursue it further. And so that's, yeah, I sort of got waffled into it, I guess.
Love it. I'm going to get to Abigail's question one second, but one thing you may not know about Debbie, just from where she's sitting right now, but is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said at one time you think you might be the only certified interpreter who is a little.
It was.
I was. But there's someone else now?
Yes, I was the first nationally certified, and now there's another young lady that lives up in Washington.
I guess we're happy about that. No.
Yes, we're happy about that. Yeah, I broke the, I guess, the ceiling for that, because there was no other little person that was a sign language interpreter that was nationally certified. There are EIPA, yeah, EIPA interpreters around the states that work in educational, but they're not nationally certified otherwise. No.
What about, so along those terms though, obviously, what you would face would be different than a deaf person, but have you as a little person experienced discrimination either from hearing consumers, from agencies, even from maybe deaf consumers? I mean, what kinds of things have you experienced?
Mostly hearing, not thinking that I'm qualified for whatever reason, because I'm little. I don't do a lot of K-12 anymore, and I think I told you this layout, but I'm not sure. I was interpreting for an agency that sent me to a lot of schools because I was actually placed in classrooms where there were some problems. If there was a problem child or there was some language issues, and the interpreters that were working with this person or this student or these students were having some issues, that's where I often went. I mean, I also interpreted just regular classroom too, where mainstream programming was going, but and I've touched every single RDSPD in the greater Houston area at least 4 or 5 times. But there was one school that I was leaving class one day a few minutes early, because they were getting ready to release all the deaf kids to a bus separately from the other kids. So they were leaving and I left. And as I'm walking out the door, I hear the screaming behind me. And this woman, which was a teacher, ran up to me and say, hold on, hold on. She grabbed my shoulders and she said, somebody get my phone. And I'm looking at her, what? What's wrong? And she said, I need somebody to get my picture of you because you look like Little People, Big World Amy, and I want to put you on Facebook with me. Oh, yes. 5 times, not once. 5 different times I went back to that school, reported her, and nothing happened. Nothing. So I don't go to that school anymore. Yes, I know. I know. Yes, it happens. And it happens, yes. Mostly K-12. So I don't do K-12 too much anymore. I love the kids. The kids are fine. I don't usually have a problem with it. The deaf kids, the hard of hearing, cochlear implanted kids, no problem. It's the hearing kids I have a problem with. I've been pushed, I've been shoved, I've been hit, I've been slapped, pushed down. Yeah. So, yeah.
Have
But
places been pretty good about making accommodations as far as
yes,
like a platform or other things?
yes.
Good.
I'm everything else is good. Yeah, I've worked with a lot of other interpreters. I don't have a problem with other interpreters. I don't have a problem with most adult deaf people either. So
I think
yeah.
that's because most of us get it, what it's like to work with a marginalized group of people.
Yes, I think we do. Yes.
Well, interesting. Thank you for sharing. Abigail asked, if you could go back in time to give yourself advice about interpreting, what would you say? What would you say to past Debbie?
I would tell myself before I did it that I need to start acquiring more English. I'm serious, y'all. I am serious as a heart attack. Your interpreting will skyrocket when you start understanding your own language. You will be able to break things down better. You will be able to interpret on a higher level, and you'll find that confidence starts building. You're going to be able to put it out there, and you're going to get the responses back that you understand. And you're going to be able to make that not an ASL gloss, talking speaking for that deaf consumer in their ASL gloss, but you'll actually be able to make sense and make it real English. But you have to work on your own English. You have to work on your own English. Every interpreter, intern, and people that have been through the program that are finished, I constantly tell them, I want to get away from the word, phrase, sentinel level. We need to get to context, but we can't get to context if you don't know what that word means. And if your first language suffers because you don't have enough English, your second language is going to be worse. And you're not going to be benefiting your deaf consumers at all. And you're not going to have a good name for yourself. So what are we in this for? What are we really in this for? I would question yourself if you're not going forward with trying to acquire more English. And this is one example, and I know there's a few people in here that know who I am, including my friend here that has been through the program. This is Christy Spencer.
I thought that was hi, Christy.
Yeah. So what I will suggest to y'all, and when y'all graduate, you come see me, I will get you something. But that book that I'm going to give you is a book that you write in. My very first mentor I ever had gave me a book when I graduated. And it was a book of 3x5 note cards with 3 holes in them and a 3-hole punch and a small, yeah, I guess it was about this big book. On one side, I wrote the English word. On the other side, I wrote ASL gloss. And then under the ASL gloss, what other English word I could put in there. And then I went back to the English, didn't look in the thesaurus. I had to think it through, because if I look through a thesaurus, I'm not going to learn it. I have to think it through. What other vocabulary words will fit that very sign? So example, drag, drag, D-R-A-G, drag. How many different ways can you sign that? Oh, a plethora. So you have the word drag. Okay, so now you know the sign, but now we have a sign for drag. What other way can we say that in English? Pull behind. It's a phrase, okay? Or toe. You have other English words to use. Do not be stuck with the ASL gloss and say, this English word means this sign. This sign means this English word. And I'm going to challenge you to change it. Every single time you see a sign, that same sign, this boring, what other way can you say boring? Say something different. Expand your vocabulary. I don't know how else to help you with that other than you're going to have to make that happen on your own.
I think the one that bothers most interpreters is curious, right?
Oh, don't use the word curious.
Yeah.
What other way can you say it, please? Yes, exactly. Exactly. You're right, Leo. Yeah.
Debbie's really good, especially when she's worked with groups of aspiring interpreters or new interpreters about doing exactly that, looking at idioms or at synonyms or those types of things. It's definitely one of her strong points when she's working with mentees, which I appreciate. Speaking of mentees or people that Debbie has brought into the field, they are a many. And some of my students are currently taking a deafblind class. It's called Working with Deafblind Persons. And for those of you who aren't from our Houston area, our professor, Sarah Goodwin, is deafblind herself. And so she teaches that class amongst a couple of other classes as well for us. And anyway, what's been great once we get in person again now, yay, is that the students have been able to benefit from seeing interpreters working as tactile, protactile interpreters. And Debbie, she can't tell you, but I can tell you, she's been one of those interpreters. And one of the frequent interpreters who works with Sarah at our campus, at least, is Rita Torres, I believe. No, not Torres. Rita Aguilar is her last name. There's like 3 Ritas in Houston. So anyway, Rita Aguilar, and she's fantastic. But what you may not know is how Rita got into this. So would you like to tell us, Debbie, how Rita became an interpreter?
I was interpreting in the medical center at a hospital where she was employed as something other than an interpreter. And my deaf patient had to talk to her, so I'm interpreting for this deaf patient. And she asked me after we were finished, she said, how do I do that? And I said, oh, go to school, become an interpreter. She said, how do I do that? So we talked. And when my deaf patient left, she took a break. And every time I ended up going back to that campus of that hospital, I would meet her. I would make a point to go see her and say, hey, how are you doing? And she like shocked. She became the top-notch deaf protactile interpreter in this area. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I was able to talk.
She's amazing. Yeah,
she is.
And highly requested for that.
Yes.
A million times over. But we would not have Rita if it weren't for her seeing Debbie. So yay. And that's happened multiple times. That's just one of many examples of that. But anyway, be Debbie. Everybody be an ambassador for interpreters, for real. Emily is asking, have you done any VRS work? If so, what has been your experience working in that field? Oh, the experiences. Tell us the experiences. Tell us.
Well, I'm sure you could tell them just as much. Yeah, I've been with Sorensen for 16 years, and they've only been around 17. So I've been since I was one of the first 15 employees we had here in Houston for the Houston Center over off of Beltway 8. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about working with two-dimensional. I find that my sign to voice, even though I was a level 5, even though I was nationally certified, my sign to voice skill set grew a lot. The finger spelling, everybody freaks. Oh, their finger spelling a name. You're going to know it. It's going to come easier. It will come a lot easier. I strongly suggest if you can get in and work either at Purple or Sorensen, either one, do. Your skill sets will skyrocket if you allow yourself to grow. Some people get into it and they're quotas. They this is the same thing for them all the time. So it's not any big challenge for them. And they don't challenge themselves. I challenge myself, and I can tell you almost on a daily basis, like today, my challenge was, because I just left Sorensen to come here, my challenge today was catch every single last name. Last name. First names are not so bad because it comes up on your screen often, but the last names are not common. Like Wakoski. What? And I got it. That's my challenge. I challenge myself daily for every single, and I work somewhere between 4 and 8 hours at a time. So I take my breaks and I do what I need to do to take care of myself. My self-care is there. But and then I celebrate later when I've done it. I also do that. They do the same thing with the celebration when I go to assignments. If I'm going to go to, let's say, physical therapy assignment, fun, not. They're fun in a way, but they're really not. It's the same stuff, repetitive over and over again. How can I make this interesting for myself and challenge myself to use different vocabulary than I've ever used before or that I commonly use and get rid of that gloss? And I do that. And then when I get out to the car, I do my happy dance and then I'm good. That keeps me going. I don't know what drives you, but that's what keeps me going.
I like that. I would say even for VRS or really any interpreting assignment for me, like I mean, like you said, I pray, but in addition to that, like Debbie can attest, like if I'm ever at the center, one of the first things I do when I get there is like, it's gonna be a great day, like I try to hype myself up, like, yeah, it's gonna be a good day, and like I type it out to everybody, like, yeah, it's gonna be good. Like, and it's not fake, like I really feel like that. And like if I have a couple of bad things happen, then I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. Yes. David power pose. We just watched in class this entire TED talk on Amy Cuddy talking about how just changing your posture for a few, like 2 minutes at a time, will actually change your hormonal levels to make you feel more confident. And yeah,
endorphins change. Yes, they
I
do.
should be doing the power pose. That's what I should be doing, David. Anyway, yes. No, that's really good. You mentioned a couple of things. It does work. I would agree, Laura. If you don't mind, would you mind just touching on, because I think interpreting is great, but what do you do like in your own downtime to kind of give yourself some balance? Because I think that's something that we typically as interpreters are not very good at. And I know like even in your bio, you mentioned, some of your family and things like that. So what are some things that you do just to kind of keep that balance to where you're not just you work a lot. I know you do, but what do you do to try to balance that out in your home life?
I like giving back. I give back doing free pro bono work when it's necessary. I like giving back to my community, my deaf community. I will I will do things. I don't want to talk about it because it sounds like I'm bragging, but I do things for my deaf community, people that live in my area because I live in Conroe, that might need a little extra help. I have one lady that's been going through a divorce and she really needs a lot of encouragement. So it's I'll go with her and we'll just go have coffee or and just have somebody to sit with it in her first language that she can talk to, that she can trust. Not just her. There's many people that I do that with. But I also do a lot of pro bono stuff when I know, and then advocate for payment for interpreters to come in the future because this is what it's like. Um, and then my husband and I go camping, and we go camping. Christy is my camping buddy. We go camping. We have a little camper, a little 13 and a half foot cute little thing. And I get away and I don't think about interpreting. I don't think about anything but relaxing And when I come back, I'm refreshed and ready to go. That, and then I call my kids and grandkids. I have a stepdaughter and two sons. My oldest son is 49, and I have a grandson and a granddaughter that's going to be getting married this year. And I have one, two, three, four, five, six great grandchildren, and I love them dearly, even though they're all up north. And my youngest grandson is really, he's 2.5. And both my boys are little like me. Their daddy was 6 foot tall. They're both little like I am, but my oldest son is an architect. And I like giving him a call and saying, okay, how was your day? Give me some feedback on what happened with you and your wife today. How are you celebrating their anniversaries on Pi Day, 314? So they're getting ready to do something with that, and he talks about that. So it's getting away from interpreting, but yet when I get into interpreting, I know that I'm really making an impact. So it's a positive thing, no matter how I work it. And if somebody has a bad day and they decide to unload on me, it's I have a mentor, I pray, and then I understand that maybe their cat got run over or their dog's in the hospital. Don't know everything that's going on, and so I give them a bye for that, because grace. When I give grace, I get grace. So I balance it with enjoying my personal time like that. I have to. You have to be balanced. If you're not, and you get all into interpreting and deaf and all that, you're not going to be happy. You're going to get burned out. You're going to get disgruntled. You're going to almost despise deaf people, and you don't want to get there. You're not in it for that reason.
I appreciate that. Your mic was a little hard to hear.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sorry.
I heard. We still heard you.
You know what? I need to take my. Oh, by the way, y'all, I'm becoming hard of hearing. I have hearing aids.
This is the only group of people who'll be like, that's so cool. Yeah, you have come to the right place. Anyway, I feel like we always give such different reactions to parents who tell us that, like, like people say, my child is deaf. I'm like, wow, really? That's so cool. And like, whereas they're like, oh, for most other people.
Right.
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 Abigail asked, I'm currently taking ASL 3. What should I do to help me improve my signing ability? Because I often feel stuck when I'm signing. That's fair. I think we all kind of plateau sometimes.
Yeah, we all do. Everybody does. If you don't plateau, you don't have a place to rest. You have to plateau. If you're constantly going uphill, you're going to get tired. You have to plateau. And it feels like you're not getting anywhere, but you still are moving forward. Challenge yourself. Challenge yourself. Look at yourself some other way, some difference. ASL 3, I think out of all of my classes that I ever had and in college in the program, was my favorite class. There was more vocabulary there that challenged me, that I had to start thinking semantics. I had to start thinking about prosody. I had to start thinking a lot more about how does this change the meaning. Um, and my professor that was deaf reminded me that the meaning is all what it's all about. Specifics are there. You have to get them, but the meaning is what it's all about. Um, she had a master's in English and a master's in ASL. So she knew what she was talking about. She said that keep on going. It's frustrating. My midterm, it's the first time I ever made a C in college. And I brought it up to an A by finals. So it was a challenging class, but I learned so much from that. And I learned about me and what makes me tick and how I process. Have you all taken the VARK, the VARK?
I don't know. You guys can comment in the chat if you know what she's talking about. I've not taken it, but I know what you're talking about.
I suggest you do. Yeah, I suggest you do. You know more about how you learn. And when you start getting information, from people and they're trying to teach you and it's not in your learning style and it doesn't fit your learning style, try to find another way to learn about it. at least go for your second.
Do you mind
VARK,
explaining a little, yeah, what VARK is?
okay, VARK is visual learning. Ah, A, auditory. I hear better and learn when I hear better than what I see. So me, I'm very visual. So visual for me. I can hear and understand exactly how they put that thing together. R, reading, writing. If you can read and write it out and you understand much better that way than you do any other way, then you're an R. K, kinesthetic. I'm a visual learner too, Abigail. VARK, yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. So if you go through that, and while you're going through your program, understand that you need information a different way, tell that to your professors. Tell that to your group that you're with, your cohort, whoever you're learning with. Tell them, I need to learn it this way. Can you give it to me in another medium? For me, visual is best. Kinesthetic is second. And I knew I was getting it when I woke my husband up in the middle of the night one night, and and then he slapped me. He goes, "Wake up! You're slapping me because you're signing in your sleep." I'm like, "Oh, it is my second language now. Thank you. I'm sorry." Because it became my second language. I was dreaming, signing. And when you get to that point, you've started acquiring some language. But it's that I learned visually and I learned kinesthetically.
You
For me,
probably wished you had picked up Spanish at that point, but that's beside the point anyway.
Spanish is my third language, but I don't utilize it as often. My daughter-in-law is from Monterrey, and she just passed her citizenship papers. Yay! She's going to be swearing in the next month. Yay! So she speaks a lot of Spanish to me to try to get me going. So yeah, to try to help me understand even more. So, but I'm always learning. So yep.
Monterrey is one of my favorite places in the world. So
Mm-hmm.
David asked, after you finished your interpreting program, and actually before I even finish this question, I just want to say one thing we've talked about in class this semester at least is that especially like that Amy Cuddy video, people have this imposter syndrome, and they feel like I've had so many graduates who've come to me and say, I have this piece of paper now that says I'm certified. Like literally the day they get it, they come to me and they're like, I'm not certified. Like this paper says I'm certified, but I'm not certified. And I always tell them, I'm like, you may not feel like that, but how long ago did you take that test? And 6 months, 3 months, however long ago it was, I was like, technically you've been certified since that day. And your skills have probably only gotten better since that time. So you're actually better than when you took the test. So what makes you think you're not qualified, And so along those lines, David asked, after you finished your interpreting program, how long did it take for you to feel that you had made it? Like, how long did it take for you to feel comfortable enough to say, I am an interpreter?
I'm going to cheat. What happened with my program, now remember, I finished the program in 1990. I've been around a while. And at that time, I was in St. Louis, and the biggest agency in town was able to talk to somebody when they weren't supposed to, and got their hands on all of the VRS tapes of our midterms and our finals. And she approached me in my next to last semester and asked me to come work for her. And I said, I can't. I'm in VG class, minimum language VG class. It's my last class. And I'm taking my internship and we'll have my final next semester. I can't start working for you. I'm not qualified. And she said, oh, but you are. And I said, but I'm not. And I refused. And a few weeks later, she asked me again. She said, by the way, Debbie, I will give you all the intern hours that you need if you'll come work for me. Huh. Okay, then I might do that. Because she was an agency owner that was nationally certified, state certified. She knew what she was talking about, and she felt I was qualified. I had to listen to somebody and trust them. I can't trust myself because I'm not a good mirror. Your mirror is skewed. It's not, it's only going to be from all of your experiences with all the scratches and everything you've got on it. You have to trust the people that tell you you're qualified. Now, does that mean you can do anything and everything? Oh, no. But you can do what you know you can do and put it to that limit at first. So I did my very first job. I didn't tell you what I did in the lab, but I worked for an oncologist, like I said, but I worked at a trauma center. And I actually, my major job was working in microbiology. So parasites, worms, all that nasty stuff, and poop. Uh, Everything that comes out of the body comes to the lab. And so I had everything that was nasty, bacteria, viruses, spirochetes. There's a lot more besides funguses. There's a lot more things that can hurt you. So she didn't know what my background was, and she put me in my very first assignment at a community college, much like Lone Star. And my very first class that I interpreted for with a team, it was a 4-hour program, 4-hour class, was parasitology. Oh, let me see. We have overheads. I'm watching my interpreter that's teaming with me, and she keeps looking over her shoulder to look to see how stuff is spelled. I get there, when I spell her out and I start sitting down to interpret, I don't have to know how it spells because I know how it spells. I know what it looks like. I know what they do. I know the etiology of everything that they're talking about. And my interpreter, seasoned, got up and left me. I had the rest of the class by myself. And the deaf student went on and became a medical lab technologist, had a 4-year degree. And asked me though, right after that class, said, how did you know all of that? And I said, well, this is my profession. And she goes, no, you're an interpreter. So when she told me that, no, you're an interpreter, I'm like, okay, I've been validated by a deaf person. I've been validated by my company that hired me. I guess I am. So that's how I knew. And then from there on, I was very picky about my jobs, but I did take just about everything that came across my plate. Yeah, because I wanted that experience. As long as I was teaming with somebody, I knew I was safe.
So I'm gonna embarrass myself for a second here. So one of the reasons that I knew I needed a Debbie in my life is because oh my goodness. So the first time I did an accounting business class, I thought I was an idiot. I was 19 and I was an idiot. That's what happened really, is they said it's a business class. And I was like, oh, I buy things. Yeah, that was the dumbest mistake ever. So I go in this class and again, like Debbie just talked about, they had overheads, shows how old I am, right? Like they had like, I'm not talking about like, the projector overhead, like, the transparency paper overhead, right? So I'm sitting next to this transparency overhead and I felt like I had made the best ASL sentence ever. Okay, I was so proud of myself because the professor said, so let's talk about overhead costs. And I said, I reference overhead cost how much? That's not what overhead costs are. I know that now. I did not know that at the time. And the reaction I get from the deaf guy, who this is his major, okay, like business and accounting is his major. He's like, he's just hanging his head at me, and he looks up at me and he's like, that's not what it means. And I was like, okay. And I realized very quickly, I need a mentor for this because I don't know the first thing about accounting and I will never accept another assignment. And that's why I was so resistant when they wanted to give me the class that I ended up teaming with Debbie, because I was like, no, not until somebody trains me better in this, because I made a fool of myself before. So yeah, we're so thankful for for people like Debbie in the field who know parasitology and accounting and. So so Raina is asking, where do you find mentors in the different fields? That's a good question, like in the different kind of specializations within interpreting.
So who do you hang out with? I suggest Well, okay. My era was much different than yours. I would suggest you get a hold of, we job shadow now. I'm working with Texas Workforce. There's they do a lot of job shadowing for transitional students. They like to transition them with job shadowing. There's nothing wrong with you job shadowing. There's nothing wrong with that. You have to maybe sign some paperwork that you're not going to take information from them that's proprietary or whatever. But I would go into some place that you know, not necessarily where deaf people are, but something that you're interested in. Working in a printing shop, working in a trying to think, in anything in sales. We have deaf people that work everywhere now. Now, didn't happen before. You had to have some kind of paper proving that you could. But they're hired to do everything. DoorDash. Do you know anything about DoorDash? Uber. Do you know anything about Uber? Do you know anything about Lyft? Do you know anything about, ride along with somebody to see what that process is. And the more experience you get with these, just just touching on these different things will give you a lot of insight. So you'll have an understanding when I'm interpreting for somebody with DoorDash. I know that they have to call in. I know they have to do this. I know they have a problem with, they have a card. They have all these things that you don't know unless you do it. And like I said, ride along with somebody. Go to a job site that will work with transitional students. They have a lot of experiences. And how do you teach cooking? How do you work in a back room of any restaurant? You'll learn a lot. So the more you put yourself out there to willing to learn, the more you're going to glean at seasoning and that experience, and the better you are as an interpreter. You will be much better. Promise you.
I took some classes at the University of Northern Colorado with, I think she's a doctor now, Dr. Robin Dean. I think she's a doctor. Anyway, and Dr. Bob Feller.
She is.
And and one of Robin's suggestions was doing exactly that. Go observe what just the, you know, people in their natural habitat, you know, without any kind of deaf people even present, to see like, what should this interaction look like if it were just an average interaction? And then, you know, try to factor in, okay, now when a deaf person's in this and an interpreter, like how does that change the scenario and stuff? So that's a really good suggestion, like going to look at what does just an average setting look like, so that I get a visual. So especially if you're visual, you know, understanding of what that looks like. That's really smart. And if you know deaf professionals who are in those fields, more the better. Like go figure out how they sign some of those things, like, you know.
And that's exactly what I've done. I've actually gone with a deaf person on a job, whatever they do, and I pay for that by taking them someplace to eat. Thank you. And then I could pick their brain about how did that feel? What did you do with that? What was the conflict that you had, or what was the biggest challenge you've had going through this service industry that you're working in? Asking them, because when you ask them, that shows respect to them. And I can promise you, when they need an interpreter, they're probably going to ask for you, just because you respect them and you have an understanding of what's going on.
That's so true. And they feel invested in you. I know anytime I go to a deaf social, like Earl and some other people, they'll be like, oh, wow, she's certified now. You know, I helped train her. And it's true. I mean, they absolutely did. And so they feel invested in you at that point, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Just to give you guys a warning on time, we have maybe 10-15 minutes left. And so if you have any burning questions, make sure you type them into the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll let you ask your question. But whilst we're waiting for you to ask those, I know we talked a little bit about, and this may be too sensitive, and that's okay. You can always, I won't be offended if you don't want to answer, but you talked a little bit about some of your best experiences. What were some of the most worst, or you even talked about how we have trauma and, you know, all kinds of trauma, whether it's secondary or actual trauma. What were some of the situations that always stuck with you that were less than desirable? And was it about the situation? Was it about, kind of like you said, what's going on between these people, or what was it that made that situation terrible?
I have several. I have several. And have had to have therapy. No, I'm kidding. I have actually talked it over with some people, though. Yeah, definitely, with some mentors that I've had in St. Louis and here. Um, One of them was actually to have to tell a mama that her baby was dying, and it was in utero. So she was not going to, the baby was not going to survive much longer. And when it did finally pass away, I was there for that as well. And so they had to abort the fetus because it was dead. That hurt me so bad. I had to go home and cry. I cried. I probably cried for 3 days, silently for two, but it was just I had to go through grieving because I yes, this is what's happening. We're doing an ultrasound measuring size and measuring the 3D stuff, and the baby's not growing, and the baby's not surviving. That was hard. That was really hard. Telling someone that they have less than 3 months to live. End of life seems to be a problem. Um, Another one, not so dramatically horrible, but interpreting for someone that I was one of three interpreters in a court situation. And the it was a situation where this person, this man, was brought into the courtroom because he was summoned on a warrant, was told he had no contact with this other person that he had nearly killed, stabbed her 21 times and she survived. And he went to prison and now he's out and he's off paper and he went after her because she survived. And because she survived, they found him. And he wanted, and we were in court. So we had a court interpreter. I was the interpreter for the plaintiff, and the defendant was the man came in with a huge Bible. And when he sat down with all these crosses and everything, all this bling, he looked over at me and then he looked at the other interpreters while we were waiting and he said, if I lose, you die. It told us all three interpreters signed it very subtly, but signed it. So my court interpreter, we all looked at each other and she went to the judge and said, we have to have a conference. And so once court was over, he was not arrested because he really had not had contact with her. He was given one final warning. And she was escorted out. We were escorted out and given about 20 minutes to get in our cars and leave before we had to have anything to do with him. And he was also warned about us and said that if there was any contact with us, that was scary. That was probably the scariest thing. I really, my heart just raised just even thinking about it just now. But it's in another place and another time, and he's no longer around, so I'm okay.
Well, that's not terrifying, she said sarcastically. Yeah, that's wow. Okay, well, didn't expect that answer, but okay, there you go. There it is, people. There it is. Something else I always warn people about is, you've talked a lot about medical, mental health, some of the safety issues, jail, some of that stuff. But something I always try to warn students about too is funerals. Like, you don't think about the fact that they're going to put you right next to the dead body. You're right next to a cadaver. It's right there. Uncle Bob is right there. No offense, Bob. I always say Bob. Anyway, not this Bob, different Bob. Uncle Bobby is right over here, and you're standing right next to him. And I've seen so many interpreters who don't think about it before they get in that setting, and they get up there and they're just like circling, and you're like, oh, okay, switch. They think they're going to be fine until they actually get there. So,
Right.
Abigail is asking, how do you stay composed in those types of situations?
I I did this in medicine. So when I'm in medicine, we're working with a patient that is probably going to die. A telephone pole fell on him, or they have been a trailer ran into the front of this person's vehicle and has lacerated their liver, or there is there's some major trauma to this person's body. and you can't cry. You can't show emotion in those settings. I had to learn how to do that. So I was able to do this and go. And so as an interpreter, it shocked me at first. And I was like, no, you know what? Go back there, Debbie. Put it in the back set of your head. You can deal with it later. Do what you got to do. You're not helping them if you're crying. You're not helping them if you are emotional. In fact, you're going to lose it. They're going to lose it. Hold on to it. It'll be fine. Get rid of it later. And I have every single time, except for the baby. That was really hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard.
I think it's not, as long as you can, I don't know, my personal opinion for what it's worth is I think that it's okay if you show some emotion, as long as it, like you said, doesn't come to the point where, you know, you're blubbering. I mean, then you're not, like you said, you're not doing anyone any favors at that point. So yeah. Yeah. Ooh. Something else I was going to ask you about that. Hold on. I think, I don't know. The court thing really threw me off. I was, wow. Ooh, I can't even imagine that. Like somebody's threatening you. Like, Oh, one thing, can you tell us what is required? Because some of these folks are from Texas, some are not, but what are some of the standards that might be required in a legal setting, whether it be here in Texas or in other places, for someone who wants to pursue legal/court certification?
No, RID has a legal certification, and I would strongly recommend that you go for that legal certification if you really want to do it. It's a different ball of wax. If you have to have the legal jargon, you have to know the processes, you have to know what you can and cannot do, and your hands are going to be tied in a different way than they are in the community. You have to know what your rights are, and you have to know how to speak to it. You also depend heavily on your team. You will usually have a team. You usually do not work by yourself. Um, and your team needs to be legally certified too, not for legal certification. You got to have a good, you don't have to be an attorney, but you have to have some good legal groundwork done. You have to know the vocabulary processes. You have to know all of this. If you don't go, and there's a lot of good programs out there, a lot of workshops that are like weekend or week long stuff that you just look for it, you can go. And it's expensive, but it's worth it. If you really want to get into it, that's what you do. Do not, Texas requires legal certification now. It didn't when I first came, and not really. You had to be a level 3 to be a certified 3 and be working in so many years in legal settings and all that. I worked with my deaf attorney, and after that, I'm done. I was done. I really don't like working in court. It's boring, and then it's really stressful when you are on. So you do that massive swing, and it's very quick, and I don't like that. So I don't do court.
Yeah, and life-threatening.
It is life-threatening. Yes.
Oh wait, we're having a hard time hearing you again. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, and it is life-threatening too.
Yes,
you're right. Yeah, it's just yeah, you don't. It's a big swing in your emotions immediately. You're going from I'm sitting doing absolutely nothing. Oh, now we're on, and depending on where you sit, are you the table interpreter? Are you the court interpreter? Are you are you the jury interpreter? Are you the galleys interpreter? Because you have family, you have people that are going to be witnesses. Where do you sit? And the responsibility is different in each location, even though it has to be complete and clear. So yeah.
That's very true. Very true. And my understanding is that in every state, it really is a different qualification for that. For Texas, like she said, I think since either 2007 or 2011 or sometime mid, I don't know.
In that time frame, yeah.
Yeah, it changed. Although I thought, and maybe Bob knows too. Bob, I know you're in a different capacity right now, but I thought that NIC or RID had put their court stuff on hold, isn't it? I don't know. Yeah. So I think that EEI is the only court certification you can currently get, and I think you have to be at least a level advanced level, I think, to be able to go, right?
To be able to test, to sit for it.
Yeah, still in moratorium. Okay, thanks for popping in there. I know it's not really your role right now, but I appreciate it. Okay, yeah. Also, BEI, I'm not a native Texan, so I'm not like BEI. But the BEI does a lot of great things. And so for those of you guys who are not in a BEI state, Board of Evaluation of Interpreters, it's also the only certification that has a trilingual certification. So FYI, in case any of you guys are interested in pursuing that. All right. Any last burning questions that you guys have? Make sure and put it out there. Not my last burning question that I have for you is, if these students come to the north side of Houston, is there anywhere where they might be able to, get some mentorship from time to time, or like, I don't know, anybody they could work with up in that area, Debbie? I don't
know. You know what, if you guys got a group together and you wanted to meet somewhere, I'm more than happy to do that. I'm more than happy to do that. I'm not going to be around forever. And the people that were ahead of me, that passed this baton on to me, it's time pretty soon for me to pass the baton on to you. And I really want y'all to do right by our deaf community. We would not be here, and you've heard this before, we would not be here, but we're not for them. And their willingness to teach us, and their willingness to tolerate our mistakes and our errors and our screw ups. I would, there's just a couple more things I want to say before we hang up here. Maintain professionalism. I'm not very professional appearance right now, but maintain professionalism. You get a lot more respect if you do. Number one. Number two, when you are talking about our work, talk about it from an interpreter's perspective, not the deaf perspective. I want you to talk about it like we talk about prosody. A deaf person that is not educated in ASL does not understand that. Do you understand what semantics are? You understand English. Do you understand semantics in English? Do you understand prosody in English? You know what it means. And as an interpreter, you should. So if you don't, learn. Talk about it with your cohorts. I had a cohort group. There was 5 of us that we got together every other Tuesday. And back in 1985, 6, and 7, I paid $20 a night for 3 hours or 4 hours for my mentor to teach me and check in with me, make sure I was clear, my articulation was there, I was not going off the deep end, I was not doing the things I was not supposed to do, and really challenged me. $20. I only made $4 an hour at that time. That was a lot of money, but it was worth it because look where I am, and look what it has afforded me, and look how the deaf community has been impacted because I was actually able to do something for them. So I'm going to ask you, if it's worth time for you, and it's worth any kind of money, even as I was in school. So if it's worth anything for you, consider having a mentor that's willing to really teach you and really challenge you. And yes, I'm on the north side. I'm in Conroe, close to Willis, off of 45. I'm not far. And Christy's close to me, and I work in the Woodlands, and I drive actually just about everywhere, including Belmont and Galveston. So I'm not willing to drive that far to mentor. But if you're willing to pay me, yeah, we'll talk about the money later. But I don't charge very much at all. She can tell you, I don't charge very much at all. I want it to be worth your while. So if you really want to, and you really want to pick my brain, I suggest you get a hold of me. She's got that information. She can get, please, I'm on Facebook too. Oh, Lord. And then, but don't overstep your bounds when you're going into interpreting jobs. If you really don't think you can handle it, don't. Don't. You're going to do more damage for the deaf person and the hearing person, and you can cause that hearing person to lose their license because they've done something wrong, even though they didn't. You interpreted it incorrect, and they could be sued. Be careful. I want you to stay in the realm that you can, consistently learn, and then expand. You've got this, you think you can do this, push it. Don't do this. I love my deaf community that I work with. I don't like all of them necessarily, but I love them because they're, they're people. But I do, I really want y'all to be the best you can be. So when I'm gone and I can't work anymore, I know good people are in there. So if I can feed you anything, I can give you anything, I can support you in anything, please let me know.
Very true. Yay. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We do at the end of all of our meet and greets is I want everyone who feels comfortable, pop up your video, pop up those videos. Well, hello, everybody. It's so good to see you. Hi, peeps.
Seen a few of you in that class we were talking about. Yeah. I've seen a few of you.
Reina, it's Adriana. Oh, I didn't realize it was you, Adriana. All right, very good. All right, so here's, and interns, you obviously can have your videos on too, but here's what we always do. We are going to take two, count them, two photos, fotografías, for those of you who habla español. We are going to take two photos, and the first one is going to be normal, just your smile or I love you or whatever, like normal. Okay, and then our second one is a silly one. Anyone who knows me knows that we always do a silly photo. So let us start with our not silly one. 1 second, let me move this off my screen. Okay, are we ready? Okay, now think of something silly you want to do. Okay, here we go. Good job. All right, let's everybody give Debbie a round of applause. I always do a round of applause, round of applause or round, either way. Thanks everybody. If you follow us on Facebook, I know old school Facebook, but we do have a club page. It's FASLI, FASLI, so Future American Sign Language Interpreters. And we are the Sci-Fair campus, so it's CYFAIR, Sci-Fair. It stands for Cypress Fairbanks, for those of you who are not from the Houston area. Yes, thank you very much, Alexis. If you follow that on Facebook, we will post any of our future meet and greets on that page. And we post a lot of other stuff on there too, so feel free to check that out. Also, if you're an intern and you want to be added, or if you're a recent graduate or something, and you're just wanting some practice like what these students were doing tonight, I can add you to a group app that I use called Crew. And if you want to be added to it, you can text me at 832-326-3367. Easiest to text me probably, and I can get you added to that app. And I post assignments. Some of the assignments that I post are for Comic-Cons. Some of them are for, yes, Sarah knows. Also, some of them are for Zoom things like this. So some of them might be local only to Houston, and I try to label them as such in case you're not from our area. But some of them are things like this where it doesn't matter, like Bob's in California right now, so it doesn't matter where you are. Anyway, so yeah, please join us for future events. And I guess other than that, peace out, peeps. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Adriana.